The Riversdale Historic House Museum in Riverdale Park, Maryland, is one of the finest examples of federal-style architecture in the Washington, D.C. area. Construction of this National Historic Landmark was begun by Rosalie Stier, a Flemish aristocrat, in 1801 and completed by his daughter Rosalie and her husband George Calvert, grandson of the Fifth Lord Baltimore, in 1807. But it is more than a house. It is a home. Over the past 25 years, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and the Riversdale Historical Society have preserved this beautiful place and offered tours, programs, and exhibitions to share the story of many generations of the Calvert family. Much of the information which has guided the restoration and interpretation of the home is derived from hundreds of letters exchanged between Rosalie Calvert and her family after her family returned to what is now Belgium in 1803. They were discovered in Belgium in the 1970s and translated into English by Margaret Law Calcott, editor of the book Mistress of Riversdale. Today we are privileged to take a close look at the exhibition Your Presence is Requested, Calvert Weddings 1799 to Today. This exhibition traces 220 years of Calvert family weddings through a variety of letters, clothing, photographs, invitations, jewelry, wedding gifts, newspaper notices, and other precious family mementos generously donated or loaned to Riversdale by Calvert family descendants. Henri-Joseph Stier and his family emigrated from Antwerp to Philadelphia in 1794, fleeing the reign of terror that threatened the family, their land, and possessions. In 1795, they moved to Annapolis, Maryland, and in 1797, the Stier's daughter, Rosalie Eugenia, met George Calvert, who was a member of the state legislature representing Prince George's County. George began courting the young Rosalie, and by the spring of 1799, he was more amorous than ever. 21-year-old Rosalie and her groom, 10 years her senior, were married on June 11, 1799, probably at the Stier's Annapolis home. Here we see their original marriage license. Mr. and Mrs. Calvert traveled to Alexandria and Mount Vernon on their wedding trip. George Calvert's sister Eleanor had married Martha Washington's son, John Parke Custis, in 1774, when he was only 19 years old and she was only 20. George Washington recorded in his diary on June 20, 1799, that the company that dined here included Mr. and Mrs. Stier, Sr., Mr. and Mrs. Calvert, and others in their family. On June 22nd, he wrote, Mr. and Mrs. Calvert went away after breakfast. Rosalie and George Calvert had 9 children, 5 of whom lived to adulthood, and 4 of them had children of their own. Sadly, Mrs. Calvert did not live to see any of her children wed before her death in 1821. Her oldest child, Caroline Maria, married at Riversdale on June 19, 1823, a month shy of her 23rd birthday. Her groom was lawyer Thomas Willing Morris, a descendant of 2 long-established Philadelphia families. Weddings were generally held at home during this time. These weddings were usually small and simple, with just family and perhaps a few friends attending. Light refreshments, like a wedding or bride's cake, and tea were typically served. We do not know what Caroline wore for her wedding. White wedding dresses were coming into style by this time, so she may have worn a dress similar to this 1824 silk satin dress with lace trim on loan from the Shippensburg Museum and Fashion Archives. As part of her training at Madame Grelot's School for Girls in Philadelphia, Caroline Calvert, like most young American ladies of her social class, was taught needlework and took piano lessons, among other skills necessary for acquiring a good husband. We can see here a leather-bound book of sheet music belonging to Caroline and discovered in 2012 in the drawer of a piano believed to have been at Riversdale and now owned by a Calvert descendant. Her collection primarily consisted of simple pieces appropriate for an amateur, including sonatas by Mozart, as well as pieces by other European composers such as Vincent Fiocchi, Joseph Jelinek, Muzio Clementi, and Carl Maria von Faber. Caroline created this piece of needlework, labeled in her own hand, at age 16. This engraved silver cup was presented to Caroline and her husband as a wedding gift. Rosalie Calvert wrote of her son, Charles Benedict, in 1816 that Charles loves farming, horses, in short, everything belonging to a farm. After graduating from the University of Virginia in 1827, he helped his father manage the many Calvert properties and took over Riversdale upon his father's death in 1838. In 1856, Charles Benedict Calvert founded the Maryland Agricultural College, the first agricultural research college in America, now known as the University of Maryland, College Park. While a member of the U.S. Congress during the Lincoln administration, Calvert was one of the early advocates for the establishment of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Charles Benedict and his wife, Charlotte Augusta Norris, married in Baltimore in 1839 and raised children at Riversdale. By this time, Americans adopted the English custom of a wedding breakfast eaten after the wedding ceremony, which usually took place in late morning. This could consist of a light meal or a light repast of cold dishes. In addition, a cake and punch would accompany the wedding meal. This table, set with Calvert family silver and porcelain, features a variety of refreshments. Established in 1826 by William Ellis Tucker, the Tucker Porcelain Company of Philadelphia was one of the first successful porcelain companies in the United States and became known as the finest producer of porcelain in America. Their beautiful and delicate objects were highly prized by families of means. According to the bill of sale seen here, Charles Benedict Calvert purchased this set of 350 pieces soon after his marriage to Charlotte Augusta Norris. The wares cost $600, a sizable amount by today's standards. The Riversdale collection of Tucker porcelain includes some 150 pieces which have come home through the generosity of Calvert descendants, making it the second largest collection of Tucker porcelain in America. Two of George Calvert's daughters, Caroline Maria and Julia, were married at Riversdale. He would have worn his best clothes to give the brides away and play host to family and friends. Men's clothing of the period is shown here in the Calvert's bedchamber. The silhouette of menswear was changing in the 1820s, as this fashion plate illustrates. This 1826 gentleman wears a velvet waistcoat over a gold brocade one. The waistcoat and wood tailcoat are likely cut and padded to give him the silhouette of a rounded chest. He may even wear a waist-cinching foundation garment and hip pads to give him this exaggerated hourglass silhouette. It is not likely that an American man of Mr. Calvert's age and physique would attempt to copy the latest French styles. He might, however, have chosen the same general look. In the spring of 1830, George Calvert wrote that his 23-year-old daughter, Rosalie Eugenia, was graced with a number of suitors and particularly favored Charles Henry Carter, a nephew of the famous Confederate General Robert E. Lee and the grandson of Revolutionary War hero Henry Light Horse Harry Lee. Calvert gave the couple the use of his own first home, Mount Albion in Prince George's County, Maryland. They renamed the plantation Goodwood, and in 1836, Calvert formally transferred the property to Rosalie Eugenia via this deed of trust. Charles Benedict Calvert's daughter Ella married Duncan Green Campbell, an engineer in the Confederate Army and the son of U.S. Supreme Court Justice John Archibald Campbell, at Riversdale in September 1861. We do not know what Ella wore for her wedding, but many brides during this time chose to have a new dress, but chose a color they could continue to wear for some time. This silk and wool dress, on loan from the Shippensburg Museum and Fashion Archives, was made by a bride for her 1863 wedding in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Hester Virginia Calvert, granddaughter of Charles Benedict Calvert and daughter of Charles Baltimore Calvert, married Dr. Henry Walter Lilly on September 20, 1899. The wedding was held at St. John's Episcopal Church, located across Lafayette Square from the White House and often known as the Church of Presidents. guests were given a silver replica of the wedding invitation, seen here, to remember the happy day. Around the walls of this guest bedchamber is a timeline of over 100 Calvert family weddings that span over 7 generations. Items on display include elegant gifts of silver given as wedding presents to Calvert brides, contemporary wedding dresses designed by well-known fashion designer and descendant William Norris Calvert, a wedding veil worn by multiple generations of brides, and elegant wedding jewelry. Among the most unusual items is a portrait given in 1899 as a wedding gift to Richard Cray McCubbin Calvert, son of Charles Baltimore Calvert and his wife Zoe, by the Maharaja of Mysore, India. The unique two-sided painting depicts the Maharaja's ancestors. The scenario in this room shows what the wedding of enslaved workers at Riversdale might have included. We do not know if any such weddings took place at Riversdale. In contrast to the ample written sources and numerous objects related to the Calvert weddings, documentation of marriages and marriage customs of such couples is scarce, often relying on oral traditions or vague details from writings of the time. This exhibition is one of many at the Riversdale House Museum over the last 25 years that have illustrated the life and times of the Calvert family and their contributions to Maryland and U.S. history. The museum is open to the public for docent-led tours Friday and Sunday afternoons from noon to 3:30 p.m. and features many historical household items and changing exhibitions. Educational programs for children and adults are offered throughout the year. In addition, the Riversdale Gardens illustrate the bounty which sustained the residents of the property, and the Riversdale Kitchen Guild demonstrates methods of open hearth cooking in the 18th and 19th centuries. More information can be found at the museum's website or by calling the museum office during regular business hours. We welcome you to come visit and experience the beauty and rich history to be found at Riversdale.